Hello, good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our masterclass. So this is the 38th masterclass and very interesting topic for today. Make it easy for your customers to pay for you. And we have with us John Salick, a strategic AR advisor and subject matter expert at EMAGIA Corporation, along with us. John, over to you to take us through the session for today. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Akshay. We have a good program today. I know I say that every week, but this is a little different. You know, much of what we've talked about in the prior master classes, and a lot of what you see written about and hear about, is the collection effort, improving the collection effort, how to do more of it with limited staff, how to make it more effective. Today we're looking at maybe the other side of the coin, so to speak, how to eliminate the need for collection effort. And we call that facilitating on-time customer payments. So we'll have an introduction, talk about the topic and its importance, and we'll get into 4 ways to influence customers and make it easy for them to pay you on time without your having to contact them, follow up, chase them, perform collection activity. And there's really 4 dimensions to this. Is order fulfillment, invoicing, accommodating their payment method of choice, and providing self-serve capabilities to enable them to pay your invoices whenever they want to, online, while you're asleep. We'll recap the benefits, sum up with a conclusion, then answer any questions you might have. So, you know, let's start off. You'll see the phrase here in boldface, on-time customer-initiated payments. So I think we all understand what non-time means, right, according to payment terms. But customer-initiated, meaning the customer makes the payment voluntarily, unilaterally, with no follow-up from you. The money comes in on the due date. Requires no collection follow-up. Well, when you think about it, that's really the best case scenario when you sell on credit terms. Kind of put it on autopilot. Fulfill the order, send the invoice, wait until the payment terms expire, and boom, your money's there. Great. This obviously optimizes cash flow from receivables, but also reduces the cost to manage them, so you don't have to make collection calls. They're also a reliable indicator of customer satisfaction, so maximizing them is an objective. And I would suggest to all of you in the audience, try to estimate how much of your sales and your receivables come in with no effort. In other words, via a customer-initiated payment, and also how much of that comes in on time or close to on time, you know, a few days. That'll give you a good indication of how well you're fulfilling orders, the level of customer satisfaction, and also how well you've trained your customers that, hey, our payment terms are our payment terms. When we say 30 days, we expect the money in 30 days. And one way to do that is, say, for example, take all your billings from August of 2021. Where are they today? How much is still open? How much was paid? How much was credited or written off? And how much was paid on time? And then kind of scan through the on-time payments, and you can just make the assumption that there was no collection follow-up because there was no need to. And just try to get a sense for that percentage. What percent were paid on time, presumably with no collection follow-up from you? Also be nice to know what percent are still open and what percent were credited or written off, kind of a dilution factor. Doing that little 1 month study, I think can tell you a lot, but do it primarily as a measure of customer satisfaction. And then you might want to do it for another month or two, and see if the numbers are consistent. But remember, that's the best case scenario. Getting paid on time with no work, no activation, no action on your part. All right. So what facilitates on-time customer-initiated payments? Now you'll see this phrase pop up. I'll use it a lot. Pops up on every page. On-time customer-initiated payments. Well, you start off, the first thing, and perhaps the biggest influence, is perfect order fulfillment. If you fulfill your customer's order perfectly, including invoicing it accurately, you eliminate legitimate reasons to delay payment, a dispute, from incorrect fulfillment of the order, incorrect invoicing. I mean, that gives the customer a legitimate business reason for not paying on time, paying short, maybe paying late, not paying until somebody contacts them and they get their questions answered, file their grievance, request a corrected invoice, that sort of thing. So perfect order fulfillment sets the stage for an on-time payment. And how do we define perfect order? Well, typically it's delivery of the right product in the right quantity, undamaged, if it's a physical product, delivered on time to the right location in the requested mode. In other words, packaged properly, labeled the way the customer requests. Even there's time of day for delivery. This is very much, if you supply big retailers, they're very specific about packaging. Label has to be in the upper right-hand corner of the box, not the lower left. And, deliver between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m., something like that. So it gets pretty stringent, but, that's the requirements that they impose. And if you meet those requirements perfectly, that's a perfect order. And by rights, it should be paid on time, in full, without any follow-up from you. Now, this is I think, a pretty simple concept, pretty easy to understand, pretty easy to talk about, difficult to execute. To get 98, 99% perfect order is not easy, but over time, with all the quality techniques available, it is possible, or at least get as close as you can. To the degree you have perfect orders, you'll also raise the on-time customer-initiated payments. All right. What else impacts this? Well, invoicing. Now, we already addressed accurate invoices in the perfect order invoice. And clearly, that's a big factor. The Association for Productivity and Quality did a study recently that revealed that companies in the top quartile of invoicing accuracy are paid on average 19 days earlier than those in the bottom quartile. And remember, we're only talking about quartiles here. So if you're in the upper quartile, not to be derogatory or dismiss that, but it's not the top 5%, not 10%. So even just being in the top quartile and having the accuracy that implies makes a significant impact on getting paid on. So an accurate invoice is kind of a prerequisite, right? Getting paid on time. But there's also other dimensions or qualities about the invoice that affect when it gets paid. Remember, you're asking your customer, pay us on time. Well, when you ask somebody to do something, then it makes sense to make it as easy for them as possible. Makes sense here. So in addition to delivering an accurate invoice, there's some other dimensions here, like deliver it in their requested delivery mode. If they want an electronic invoice or they want it posted to their vendor portal and you send them a paper hard copy invoice, chances are it's not going to get paid on time. You're making it difficult for them. You're an exception. What else? Well, all the information they request. Certainly the PO number. A description of the product service can help too. Proper sales tax. Some customers will ask you to put an internal accounting code on it. Other requests. You may think, oh, geez, why do they need this information? Well, don't spend any time thinking about that. Just do it. Just comply. Quick story about this description of the product service. Had a client that made patient monitors that were used in hospitals. You go in the hospital, they hook you up, patient monitor, pulse, blood pressure, temperature, all that stuff. Well, this company, which was founded by engineers, which may have something to do with this, on their invoicing for a patient monitor, nowhere did it say patient monitor. It said model 859XL3, 240 megahertz, 220 volts. So when the hospital's payables department got this invoice, they said, what do we buy from this vendor? We buy patient monitors. What did they invoice us for? Don't have a clue. Put it aside. It's an exception. Got to check with purchasing or somebody. So those invoices didn't get paid on time because they raised a question. So when we talk about all requested information, it goes a little deeper than you might think. And then finally, in the format they request. If they want the PO number in the upper left, put it in the upper left. You say, oh, geez, this leads to a lot of customization. Well, yes, it does. But, most invoicing software has the ability to create and use a template for an individual customer. So it's a one-time task to set up the template. And you know what? You're probably going to end up having to submit an invoice in that form anyway. So if you don't do it the first time, you called customer, how come you haven't paid our invoice? Well, it doesn't meet our requirement. So then you create that invoice anyway, and you get paid at day 60 instead of day 30. So invoicing, everyone understands the importance of accurate invoicing, but accuracy has a number of dimensions, which we've addressed here. So remember the key theme here. Make it easier for your customer to pay you, and your chances of getting paid on time with no collection follow-up increase. All right. This next topic is probably the largest topic here because of all the change in the payment modes available to companies, how they're going to pay their vendors. So remember the title of this webinar and the theme here. Make it easy for your customers to pay you. Well, one big factor is enabling them to pay in the payment mode that they prefer. Not that you prefer, that they prefer. Now, that's a nice blanket statement. However, the payment method they choose can result in low-cost processing of their payments or significant cost to process their payments. The best example here is if your customers pay via ACH, that has the lowest cost for your bank lockbox to process. If they pay with a credit, debit, or P card, the credit card companies charge a fee, and it can be 1 to 2%. Well, 1 to 2% of a big number becomes a significant number, a significant cost. So while the customer may prefer to pay that way, you'll feel the cost of it. Paper checks also are fairly expensive to process through a bank lockbox system. So remember what we said in the second bullet point. There's no harm in influencing customers to pay. So it's a little bit of a balancing act here. One, you want to accommodate the customer's preference for payment, make it easy to pay you. Two, you want to steer them in the right direction so processing their payments is cheaper rather than costlier. Fortunately, there's a lot of new payment modes out there. And this is what's given rise to this accommodate your customer's payment preference, because there's many, many new ways, electronic ways, secure ways to pay, and companies are adopting them. They don't want to pay with a paper check. They want to pay through some sort of electronic means. And there's a lot of new payment modes come up, and you're probably familiar with some of the names: Venmo, Square, PayPal, or perhaps better known on the consumer front. But there's a host of them. And they go by a lot of different names: real-time payments, digital real-time payments, frictionless digital payments. But generally, they're much less costly than the other payment modes, excluding ACH. And remember, other good factors here: the digital RDP are made directly between the buyer and the seller through a direct, secure internet connection, kind of like trading with a customer on EDI. When an EDI customer sends an order or remit advice through EDI, that's direct between the two companies, secure, and pretty cheap, pretty fast, pretty cheap. So, and they're much more convenient for the customer to make that payment. They enable payments via a wide range of mobile devices and electronic means through this secure account-to-account connection. So if you can accept a large number of these real-time payments that your customers prefer, you're making it easier for your customers to pay you and accommodating their requests, which enhances your image as a supplier. Two more comments on accommodating payments. If a customer prefers to pay via a digital method and you can accept that, you're enhancing the customer experience, which you joined us for our strategic AR management webinar a few months ago. Enhancing the customer experience is one of the top priorities. And bear in mind, if you're selling to small and medium businesses, a lot of those are headed by a person or a small group of people who kind of do a lot of different things. Sell, fulfill orders, run the office, run the business. And they usually don't pay vendor invoices during regular business hours. So the digital payments enable them to do it nights, weekends, off hours, if you will. It makes it easier for them. Make it easy for them. There's some evidence building that you get paid earlier, sometimes even earlier than the payment terms. They pay it when they get around to it. If it's day 25 of net 30-day terms, they just let the payment fly, unless they're really cash constrained. So It's important to small and medium-sized businesses. Larger businesses are gravitating towards the new payment technology because of cost. So, mentioned this earlier. Influence the payment mode your customers use, because some are cheap for you, others are expensive. And there's basically two ways you can do that. Assess a service fee for payments made in the higher cost modes. You see this a lot in the consumer market. If you go to a retail establishment and you pay with a credit card, a lot of times there'll be a 2 or 3% surcharge on that, which makes the retailer whole from the 2 to 3% they're going to lose from the credit card. Or, rather than using vinegar, use honey and offer a discount for payments made in the lower cost modes, or some combination of the two. You need to figure out what will work with your customer base. I say influence. You want to ban certain payments. We will not accept credit card payment. That's a choice. You need to understand what the impact on your customers will be and your payments. But some engineering here, influencing your customers, works to advantage for both parties. All right. So accommodate the payment side. What's the last major function of facilitating customer-initiated on-time payments? Well, provide self-serve capabilities. Give them the ability to pay without talking to anybody, going to a portal, making a payment, seeing what invoices they owe, getting a statement of account, and it's 24/7, 365. So it can be much quicker for your customer to pay on a customer portal. You can do it around the clock, you can see the invoices, download them, see the statement, and the better customer portal have AI-powered digital assistants, which can guide customers through the payment process step by step by step. So that'll bring in these self-serve capabilities. Again, customer service, customer sat, enhance the customer experience, but also enable customers to pay unilaterally around the clock. Start doing all these things together, you'll see that your on-time payments go up, and the level of collection activity goes down, and in many cases, even the level of incoming calls to customer service go down as well. So you're making it easy for your customers to pay you on time and being able to do it independent of any contact with you. So what's the benefits? Well, we've been talking about them through the webinar so far. Clearly increase cash flow and reduce past due. You're going to increase the number of on-time payments. Enhance customer experience. We talked about that quite a bit. And increase productivity and collections because there's fewer accounts to call. You can focus more on the high credit risk accounts and hopefully reduce or avert a bad debt loss. So what are the results? Well, more cash, happy customers, higher profit. And if you look at the value chain, at the bottom, we start with the improved customer experience, reducing credit risk. If you reduce your AR, all things being equal, you're reducing your credit risk, get a greater cash flow, and ultimately increased revenue and increased profitability. So, what do we take from this? Again, instead of focusing on ramping up collection activity, collection effectiveness, we've looked at the other side of the coin. How do we make it easier for the customers to pay on time, quite honestly, without bothering us, without calling us, without making us call them? Just pay the bill on time, unilateral. How do we do that? Because that is the best case scenario. And it's make it easy for your customers to pay you on time. And we went through 4 factors that influence that. And we spent a fair amount of time on these digital real-time payments because they're growing fast and they're rapidly becoming the payment mode of choice. Questions?
Thank you, John. Our first question is, do customers prefer to remit via digital payments versus check or other means?
Well, more and more companies are preferring electronic payments as a category. And the real-time payments are becoming very, very popular. And they're actually better for both parties. So that's what we're seeing out there. And I think in today's day and age, if you do not accept many of these digital payments, you're probably not going to be rated as a top flight supplier. You're making your customers go through an extra step and pay in a way they don't want to. So there's a lot of negatives to that.
Yeah, I got that. And are there certain transactions where digital payments are especially valuable?
Well, I always look at the situation where you have a customer that's a poor credit risk and you don't want to sell to them on open credit. So either get an advance payment, which most customers will resist, or you get payment upon delivery. Well, these digital payments make that much easier. You deliver the goods, customer makes a digital payment, you can confirm the payment right there, know that you've been paid, and complete the transaction and move on. So that's one case where the digital payments are very beneficial.
Right. And another aspect is that on the customizations for the invoices, right? I mean, there are like a lot of formats, multiple different formats with different customers. Do you think is it worth the effort?
It is. It is. You know, customization impacts productivity, right? You want kind of everything standardized, automated, just the flow. When you have to customize an invoice for a customer, it interrupts that mass production, mass automation flow. But you know, at the end of the day, you're probably going to have to do it anyway. Because if the customer doesn't get the invoice in the format and with the information they want, they're not going to pay it. Somebody's going to call them. How come you haven't paid us? You know, nicer language than that. Well, how come you haven't paid us? Oh, well, you didn't put our bid number on the invoice. You didn't put the cost center number on the invoice. Okay. And then you give them that note information on the phone or via email. Somebody hand writes it on your invoice and then they pay it late. So, or they ask for a corrected invoice. Oh, you got to put our cost center number on that invoice. Then we can pay it. So you manually prepare an invoice, send it to them. Again, past the due date. And so you end up customizing the invoice anyway and getting paid at day 50 or 60 or 70 instead of day 30, 32, 35, something. And with most invoicing software, you can customize invoices per customer. So you do it once, you set up the template, and then you're kind of on autopilot. So yes, it's extra work, but it's well worth it.
Absolutely. John, I think thank you very much for the answers and all. I mean, we are almost at the top of the hour.
All right.
Yeah, and we are looking forward to all of the participants again for our next masterclass for Thursday, 31st of March. The topic is planning guidelines for faster B2B payments. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone. And again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to send them to us. We're happy to answer them and entertain your questions and concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, John.